So diffusion flames we started yesterday. You can see that PPT, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So I will quickly go through the slides what we have already discussed. If anyone has any questions or any doubt, please feel free to ask. So we started about diffusion flames. Okay, we noted down what is the difference between premixed and diffusion, and we looked at various cases. And okay, we looked at opposed jet flat flame, right? Now let us say so this is your flat flame, what this video you saw yesterday, right? Okay, so let us say that I
Yes, sir.
tilt this. Okay, so opposite flame, let us look at this turned orientation. Generally you cannot produce a flame like this because of various effects, but let us say we have a flame like this. Okay, so how will the temperature and species vary along, let us say, x-axis? So this is the flame. One side we know that fuel is coming, one side we know that oxidizer is coming. Okay, basically here. So how the flame, how the if I go from left to right along the x-axis, okay, how will my temperature and species profile look like? Can I say it looks like this? That left side I have fuel, fuel is going up to the flame, then it is consumed. Similarly, oxidizer is there at the right side. Here we have oxidizer, right? Oxidizer is coming up to the flame and then it is getting consumed at the flame. This side there is no oxidizer, this side there is no fuel. And we have reaction rate and temperature peaking at the flame front. So this is the flame front where we have peak temperature and reaction rate. You all agree to this profile?
Yes, sir.
This looks
Yes, sir.
good?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
But if
sir.
we look at any general flame, for example a candle flame, this is how it looks. Okay, this profile we discussed actually for a candle flame only. So what we can say is that any diffusion flame can be approximated to be made of opposite flames. Okay, so we can say that if you have a candle flame, so we can say that the candle flame has it is consist of diffusion jet flames. Okay, so any flame jet is like this. You can say that there are small opposite flame. This is opposite flame, like that. You understand what I'm saying? So this flame surface is made up of diffused opposite flame. Why? Because here we have fuel which is coming, and here we have oxidizer which is coming. So if you look at a small section, it is behaving very close to how a diffused flame will behave. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
this is a very important concept, and actually many CFD codes are based on that. So they break any flame into small parts, and they say that each part is like a opposite flame, and based on that they do modeling. Okay, this we have already discussed about flame also. Okay, this we not. So let us talk about this non-reacting jet. Okay, just a normal gas jet. So we have discussed how it spreads out, right? You just open this port, it will come on and it will start spreading. That is what we discussed. Now let us define some parameters to define this spreading. Okay, so for this jet, if suppose so how will the velocity vary? Okay, velocity at any point it will be maximum here, and it will go down at the edges, jet edge. So velocity will be like that, right? You all are
Yes,
okay
sir.
with this? Okay, now this is
Yes,
the
sir.
maximum velocity. Let us say that this is Vmax, and it is slowly going down. So if I say that at a point where the velocity is half of the maximum value, okay, look at this plot. So this is half of this. This point is called the half width, jet half width. So if suppose this is that point, I'll say that this is jet half width. Similarly, I will define jet half width at some other location. This is jet half width. This is jet half width, where the velocity is half. So if I join all that, I will get a straight line. So jet half width can be defined as radial location where jet velocity has decayed to half of its center line value, this area. And if I make a line of all that half widths, this side and this side, this is how it is going to look. Right? This is basically one parameter which defines how your jet is spreading. And if you define jet width like this, then this is the included angle. Okay, that is called alpha. So alpha can be calculated by taking tan inverse. Okay, so this half angle is alpha. Okay, this height, total height is x. This is the axial distance, and this is r half at that particular x. So can I write alpha is equal to tan inverse of this?
Yes, sir.
Fine.
Yes,
So
sir.
this is so this alpha is called spreading angle. Okay. So this is how we define that the ratio of jet half width and axial distance. This is used for measuring jet spread, how fast the jet is spreading. Okay, and the spreading angle is obtained by using tangent. Fine. So these are some like general normal parameter which are used to characterize how your jet spread. That's all. No, nothing very complicated here. Now let us go to flame. We have already discussed this. This also again we have discussed. Yeah, this is what we discussed about yesterday. So strictly speaking, what I mentioned is that reaction zone will have some finite thickness. It is not like infinitely thin. But for our calculation or computational efforts, we assume that this is infinitesimally thin. Okay, so this is like almost zero. It approaches to infinity small. So what that assumption will mean is that I am saying that the reactions are infinitely fast. If this is infinitely thin, so reactions are infinite fast. Why? Because if I have some thin some region, so there is where reaction actually takes place. You see, there is a curve of temperature. But if I assume that the temperature is sharply changing, that means this is a reaction sheet and all reactions happen suddenly, infinitely fast. So this is also a very important assumption for computational or calculation when we do, especially for diffusion flames. Right? So let us now look at another interesting thing which is called over-ventilated and under-ventilated flame. Okay, so let us talk about coaxial flame jet. So what we have is we have one tube which is carrying fuel, and there is a concentric bigger tube which is having air or any oxidizer. You can put oxygen also here. So we have fuel and air plus air which is surrounding it, right? So if you draw it, if you draw the top view, you can say that this inner circle is having fuel, and outside we are supplying air. Air is surrounding that fuel, right? So there, what do you understand by ventilation? So you have ventilation in your room, right? So can anyone like tell me in simple English what do you understand by ventilation? Or when will we say that the room? Let us talk about room. So your room is poorly ventilated or your room is good ventilated? How do we define that in simple English? Anyone want to try?
So the flow of gases in and out of the room. Yes, sir.
Okay, so when we say that we have sufficient airflow, then I say that the ventilation is good. If your room is closed, there is no window, then ventilation is poor, right? So in a similar way, we define flame ventilation. Okay, so if you supply more air, then we say that this is over ventilated. We have enough air, more than enough air, over ventilated, and then the flame surface will look like this. Okay, and if the flame is under ventilated, it means that it is not getting sufficient amount of air or sufficient oxygen basically. Then it comes out like this, and then it is called under ventilated. Okay, so these are the definitions. So what I just mentioned. So excess air is available for over-ventilated flame for complete combustion of fuel issued from the burner port. Okay, so because of excess air, it takes a shape like this, and if air is not sufficient, then the flame surface is expanded towards outer wall, resulting in invert. This is called invert conical flame. Is this clear? There are two different regimes or different situations depending on your airflow is sufficient or not. Is this clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Fine.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
let us see if you have understood or not. These are the two images. So which one is under, which one is over?
First one is
The first one
is over.
Over.
Yes, sir.
Second one is under.
Under.
That's it. Okay, very good. So let us move on. So let us talk a bit about soot formation. Okay, so what happens when, especially when you have diffusion flame and you don't have enough of oxygen, or the mixing is not sufficient, or there are various reasons. Okay, we'll not go into a lot of detail, but especially for a diffusion flame, soot formation is a important phenomena. This is not this is not such a big issue for premixed flames because we have very good mixing beforehand, but rich premixed flames also soot, and especially diffusion flame are known to soot. Okay, so what are the various regions? So initially when the flame comes out near the burner rim, there you see that this is called inception zone. Okay, so small particles are getting formed. We'll see how it will look like in a few slides. So initially we see small particles or inception zone. Then those particles grow. Okay, so this is called growth zone. And finally at the top you have big particles which also get burned. So it is not that you are just generating big particles, these particles also get burned. So these are getting oxidized in this oxidation zone. Okay, but sometimes you can either oxidize or burn it properly, or it can also escape the flame, as someone was discussing. So it is like a hole in the flame front. So what will happen is soot. This is called soot wings. So some particles may also leak, may go past the flame without completely burning. Okay, so let us look a picture. So can you see one line here?
Sir,
Yes.
by soot, what do we mean, sir? Is it the pyrolysis of the, what to say, our hydrocarbon fuels, or is it some other impurities?
You just wait for 2 more slides. Okay, we'll see some photos what soot look like. Fine.
Yes, sir.
So this is a flame, and this is what we call as soot wings. Okay, so basically the soot is produced and this is getting leaked. So for example, you have used candle or lamp, kerosene lamps. Kerosene lamp, have you used? Anyone used in your home? These days we don't use much, but earlier it was quite common. Kerosene lamp which has glass surrounding it. Has anyone
I've
used?
seen it in my grandfather's village, sir.
Okay, fine. So
Yes,
when
sir.
you use that, the glass becomes black.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
that black particle is called soot. Or you can do an experiment. You can take a candle in your home, burn a candle, and put one plate or something on top of that candle. Okay, so suppose this is the candle. Let me draw. Okay, put a plate on top of that candle. Do you see some black deposits formed on
Yes,
the
sir.
bottom? That is called soot. Okay, so you can try it. Let us also will talk about what soot is. So, soot formation, there are four distinct stages. Okay, so first is the formation of precursor species. That, like, these are not actually soot, but they are precursor. They combine together and form soot. So then, soot is basically a black carbon particles of different actually aromatic compounds. Okay, I don't want to go too much into detail because then we need one lecture for soot only. So we'll just briefly take an overview. If you have any questions, then we can plan some detailed discussion. Okay, so soot we have formation of precursor species. Then we have particle inception. Then that particle inception it grows, and then we have something called particle agglomeration. We'll see what it means in the next slide. And finally, as we discussed, most of these particles get burnt, but some also leave the flame without getting completely oxidized. So these are the four steps we generally discuss for soot formation. Okay, now we'll see what you are asking. So you have a fuel. Okay, so the pyrolysis of a fuel produces precursors. Okay, that could be C2H2 or PAH stands for polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. So these are very important precursors. You'll see a lot of PhDs being given for study of pH. Okay, so these are not actually, this is not a soot, but this is what that forms soot. Okay, so this is the reactant that will give rise to soot. Then this pH will nucleate. Nucleate means a lot of this molecules they will combine to form small particles. So these are very small in like microscopic range. Then these particles coalesce. Okay, let us see what coalesce means. So coalesce means big small particles they are combined and they form one particle. This is called coalescence. Okay, or basically the surface is growing. Bigger particles are getting formed. Now once these primary particles are formed, they agglomerate. Agglomeration. Now what do you mean by agglomeration? You look at this. So number of these balls or spheres are joined and they form a chain-like structure. This is called agglomeration. Okay, and larger structures like this is what we call soot. Is this clear or you have any questions on this slide?
Yes, sir. It's clear.
So this is how soot is formed, and basically you can say from this stage onwards we say that this is soot. This is like the initial stages. This is the precursor. These are very fine microscopic nuclei, but once they coalesce, then we say that this is soot. We'll get that black deposit. Okay, that is what is we mean by soot. Now let us look where what region of the flame they form. Okay, so these are some of the some results from CFD experiment. So don't look everything at once. Let us start looking one plot at once. So this is the temperature. So this is general for any diffusion flame. You see that at the outer region we have the peak. There we know that the flame is burning or oxidation reaction is happening. This is why flame front which is marked by red, which has the highest temperature, right? Now let us look at soot particle number density. So here we see a large number of particles are formed and here the particles are reduced. So any guess why, based on what we saw in the last slide? Why the number is decreasing?
Oxidation of soot, sir.
Sorry, please repeat.
Oxidation of soot. As you
That
said.
is not so dominant here. Okay, let us look at this slide again. So let us say we have a nucleus. Okay, so let us say I have 10 small particles that combine to form this one big chain. So if I talk about number, I will say one big chain. Here I will say 10 or 1000 small particles. So which will have more number, this or this?
Smaller particles will have more number.
Smaller particles, right? So this is the inception region. We have smaller particles, so we have number density is number of particles per unit volume. Okay, so we have more number of particles here. Then they start, you see the diameter. So here we have, this is the diameter in nanometer. Okay, average particle diameter nanometer. So here we have very small particle diameter. Here we have large number actually, right? Then it starts to grow. It starts to make large chain like this. Then we see that the number is decreasing, right? We have less number here, but we have large size here. Is this clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Why does it
Yes, sir.
decrease after that? I mean, the red zone is basically just at the spot, right? So after that, it goes orange and then it
Here.
turns to red. Why? Yes, sir.
So we have oxidation also, right?
Yes, sir.
So these particles will
Sir.
get burnt. Yes.
Sir, flame front is curved over here, not like a straight line.
This is the flame front. Flame front will always be curved, right?
Why, sir?
This, see, this is the flame front. See, in a candle, your flame is where we said that it is a straight line. It will always be curved. You go to candle. So only in flat. See, this is also curve. Where have you seen a flat? Flat will be only here for a flat flame. Otherwise, your flame. See, this is also in premix flame. Also, it is curved. This is the flame front. How you're saying it is flat? It will always be curved. Question I don't know. Front we talked about. Let me draw it for you. So this is the flame front. What do you look in green? So it will be curved only, right?
Okay, sir.
How do you talk about straight? I don't know what.
No,
you
not
confused,
straight,
but-
but conical, as in it was in premix.
Conical and premix. This is what you have in premix. Okay, that is a major difference. Premix is very conical. This will have curve. This is much bigger. If you see, look at this. So this is the flame from dotted line. You see, it is not at all conical, right?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
And good. We see that is the advantage of looking at images. If you look at images, you have see there also. This is curved. This is curved inside. This is curved outside. Okay. So, okay. So this again, I will repeat this red zone for temperature, where you see the peak temperature, that is your reaction zone. This is your flame surface, flame front. Anyone have any doubt in this? Please get clarified. Fine. So we talked about, yes,
Okay, sir.
any question? Okay, fine. So we talked about number density and we talked about particle diameter. So here we see small particles, it becomes large particles, and then these particles are burning, getting oxidized. Okay, so this is from CFD, from this Kohler et al. They published a paper on this. So this all results they got from CFD, and then they did some experiment. Okay, so there is something called laser induced incandescence, LII. Basically, there are different laser based techniques to obtain soot volume fraction and diameter and all. So this shows soot particle volume fraction. So what is the ppm level of soot? Okay, particulars per million or something. So this is the top region of flame where we have a large concentration, similar to what we have here. right? We have large volume fractions of soot. Is this slide clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
fine. Let us now talk about droplet evaporation. So what happens is that you have a droplet, okay, it evaporates. It is, let us say it is in a hot ambient, it is surrounded by flame from every side. So basically, generally in actual devices, we don't have a single droplet, we have a spray, okay. So let us say this is a spray. So we have different droplets at different locations. Okay, so for theoretical understanding, to make it easier and more simpler to understand, we generally talk about simple droplet evaporation. But in general, for practical devices, we will not have single droplet. We'll have multiple droplets that are burning. But it will be very complicated to study. Okay, so let us begin step by step. We'll build understanding from taking simpler assumption. So here we talk about a simple droplet which is suspended in air. It is actually moving air in air. It will get carried away by air vortices. It will move here and there. Okay. So let us say that my frame of reference is traveling with the droplet and I see how the droplet is behaving. You have fluid mechanics, you have studied about Eulerian and Lagrangian point of views. Can anyone explain what is an Eulerian or Lagrangian formulation?
Sir,
Sir,
in
Euler,
Lagrangian, we focus on a particle, and in Eulerian, we focus on a control volume.
sir,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Yes. Yes.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, in Eulerian, we observe a particular particle at a particular position,
Yes.
and in Lagrangian, sir, we observe the particle where it goes.
Yes. Good. So basically, in like let us say IC engine or gas turbine or anywhere you are burning liquid fuel, what we do is we inject a spray. Okay. Let us say this is a spray. We have atomizer here. Spray is coming out. So we have spray and we have droplets inside that spray. So if you talk about one section, let us say I talk about this section. So I will calculate how much droplets are passing through this, how much is coming and how much is going out. That will be Eulerian description. I fixed my control volume and I say that how much particles are passing. I talk about some average number or what is the average heat flux. But as you have correctly pointed out, Lagrangian means that I will follow each particle. My frame of reference is this particle. I will follow the particle and see where it goes. So droplet evaporation is we are following this one droplet. Okay. So now let us look at what happened with the droplet. So this. Okay. One general question. Why do we generate spray or droplet? Why don't, like, if suppose I want to burn petrol, cannot I have like one jet, like a tap? I open a tap, I have a liquid jet and burn that.
So we
Why do I
increase
generate?
surface area, sir. Surface area is
Okay,
increased, so vaporization will increase.
yeah, very good. So basically, this when you say droplet combustion, when I talk about liquid fuel combustion, so whatever the chemical reactions that we have discussed, okay, all that chemical reaction happen at gas phase. Okay, you see, this is your flame front, which is away from the droplet. So there is no reaction that is happening here. Okay, droplet surface or inside the droplet, there is no combustion. Combustion is here. This is your flame front. Okay, so all the combustion reactions, what we talk about, take place in gas phase. So for gas phase, we need to evaporate fuel. We need to put it in hot ambient so that it evaporates. Now, when you want to evaporate a liquid, surface area is a very critical. So instead of liquid jet, if you have small droplets, it will have much larger surface area. So it will evaporate quickly, it will burn efficiently. That is the idea. That is why we generate spray. That is why we generate smaller droplets. Okay. Now let us focus on what we have on this slide. So there is a droplet which is evaporating. Fuel is getting past the droplet, and we have a flame front sitting here. Now another question. This is the reaction sheet. So how come this sheet is at some distance? Why does not it comes closer to the droplet? Can anyone guess? Why is that flame
So
stabilized
the
there?
volumetric increase of the liquid fuel to gaseous fuel will that velocity, and then the flame front velocity will be equalized.
Yeah. So basically what happens is that we have a flame here, okay? Flame will try to go inside, and that is the SL, right? If you let us talk about a laminar flame. So flame will try to go inside by SL. If you supply fuel at a particular rate such that this is balanced, then flame will be stationary here. That is what we saw for tube. In a tube, when you supply fuel, you can hold the flame stationary. So the same thing is happening here. Now where the fuel is getting supplied, from where the fuel supply is coming? From evaporation. So we are constantly evaporating this vapor, and hence we maintain the flame front at this region for this movement. But when the mass is decreasing, when the droplet becomes small, then evaporation will become small, and then this flame rate will be inside. The flame will come inside. Fine?
Yes, sir.
So this is how a droplet evaporation and combustion look like. So we have an inner region where we have only fuel, and we have outer region where we have oxidizer, oxygen basically, and there inside, in between, we have flame front, which is this. So that combustion products are getting thrown outside, and they're mixing the flow. So now let us look at the profiles. So we start from radial distance of RS. This is at the droplet surface. This is RS. Okay, we do not start at R is equal to 0. This is at the surface of the droplet. Okay, so at the surface of the droplet, I say that temperature is Ts. Now this temperature goes on increasing till flame front. Flame will have the maximum temperature, and then it will again decrease in the main flow. Okay. Now look at the fuel mass fraction. So fuel mass fraction will be very high near the droplet. It should be like ideally 1, and then it will go down, and all the fuel is finished at flame sheet. Okay, fuel is finished here, and so see, these are two different curves. Don't get confused. This black curve is for fuel, and this yellow is for oxygen. Okay, oxygen or oxidizer is high at the flame outside region, right? And then it is decreasing till the flame front, and at the flame front it goes to 0. Similarly, fuel is 0 at the flame front, and then it goes maximum near the droplet. Is this clear? Three quantities are here: fuel mixture fraction, fuel mass fraction, oxygen mass fraction, and temperature. Three parameters we are plotting here with radial distance. So there are two important radius. One is the RS droplet radius, surface of the droplet, and this is flame front. This is RF. Is this clear to everyone?
Yes,
What
sir.
RF means?
Yes.
Fine. Let us move on then. Okay, so droplet, when you do experiments on droplet combustion, what you will see is that if you take measurement of droplet diameter, okay, if you plot the square of the diameter at different times, okay, let us say at 0.2 seconds, I measured what is the droplet diameter, and this is the square of that. Then at some other time, I plot this. So if you do the experiment, you see that all this d square is falling on a straight line. Okay, so droplet diameter is decreasing because fuel is burning and it is getting evaporated. So droplet will again become smaller and smaller, and the diameter of the droplet d square falls on the same line. Okay, so this is called d square law. Is this clear to you, this plot? Any questions on this plot?
Please repeat.
Yes. Okay. So let us say I do an experiment. So let us go back to here. Let me remove everything. So this is a droplet we have, right? Just give me a second. So this is a droplet I have. Once it starts burning, this flame will go inside and this droplet diameter will keep on decreasing, right? So initially, let us say I have a bigger droplet. After some time t, it is becoming smaller and smaller, right? With time, it will become smaller. You're okay with that? Fine. Basically, droplet is evaporating, it is becoming smaller, that's all. So let us say I measure the droplet diameter here. Let us say this is d1. Let us say this is where is this mouse? Let us say this is d2. Okay, let us say this is, I'm sorry for this drawing, but this is what I can draw using mouse. So this is d3. You're okay with this? Three different times I'm measuring, experimentally measuring what is the droplet diameter. It will decrease because droplet is evaporating. So the diameter becomes smaller and smaller. So we have 3, 4, 5 diameters, d3, d4, d5. So these are the measured values of diameters. Okay, let us say d1, d2 and d3. What we have got here. So now if I take the square of this, I have measured some value, like let us say 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter, something like that. So if I have these values in millimeters or centimeter, whatever is there, so let us say I take a square of that value, d1 square, d2 square, d3 square, square of the measured diameter, that's all. What is the diameter you measured, you take a square of that. Is this okay?
Sir, how do we actually measure this droplet diameter?
That you don't worry. Let us say we have some technique. Let us say I have a suspended droplet. I can take photo of that droplet and see in a photo how much that has become small. So don't worry about the method. Just understand what I am telling. Droplet diameter will decrease because it is evaporating, right? Whatever
Yes.
method you take, droplet diameter is going to decrease. Okay, so all I am saying is that if you plot the d square of the diameter, d square that measured value and plot it with time, okay, you see that it is decreasing with time. It is linearly decreasing with time.
Okay, sir.
Okay, what I am
Sir.
saying is, yes.
Sir, can you please change the sketch color? It's not visible on the white background.
Okay, I will make it red. Okay, so let me draw a sketch. So last, you forget about this plot. Okay, let me make a new. So you understood that, let us say, you all can see my screen, right?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let us say initially I have a big droplet. Okay, with time, because it is evaporating, the diameter will get reduced, right? So let us say this is D1. Let us say this is D2 and this is D3. You're okay with this? This is with
Yes,
time.
sir.
Okay, this is with time the droplet diameter is decreasing. That is all I'm saying. Time. Now, let us say I did some measurement. You forgot about the technique. I have used any technique and I have made droplet diameter measurement. Okay. So, I want to draw how the droplet diameter looks like with in respect to time. Okay. Let us say this is y-axis is diameter, x-axis is time, right? This is okay? You understand what I'm doing? So let us say,
Yes, sir.
let us say, let us keep some symbol for those points. Let us say this is D1. Okay, this is D2, right? Diameter is decreasing with time. This is D1. This is D2 and this is D3. Is this okay? Okay to everyone?
Yes,
I'm
sir.
Yes,
just
sir.
taking, I'm measuring what is the number, what is the size of that diameter, and I'm plotting it with time. It is decreasing with time. So this will be a curve, right?
Yes, sir.
This will give me some curve like this. Okay, so this is how diameter is varying with time. Now let us say that instead of plotting, let me just. So let us say instead of plotting d with time, let us say I plot d square. Okay. Same thing. So this is what we got for diameter. Let us say, forget about this curve. Let us say I do d square. Instead of d, I write d square. So we will have d1 square, d2 square, d3 square, right? Square of these quantities. So what this law says that if you plot d square, it falls on a straight line. If I take measurement of d square, that falls on a straight line. That is all it says. Understand? Sorry, this is d square. So this plot we talked about d versus t, diameter versus time. Now I am saying instead of d, you draw d square. Plot d square versus time. Okay, so it will not be a curve like this. It will form a straight line. That is all d square law states, that it forms a straight line. Or any questions again?
It's clear, sir.
Yes. Anyone who is not clear, I am just saying, generally we plot d versus time. We say that how diameter is decreasing with time. Instead of that d, what I can do is I can plot d square. Okay. So all this will be d1 square, d2 square, d3 square with respect to time. And that I am saying is these points will fall on a straight line. They will form a straight line. That's all. This is the experimentally measured diameter square. Everyone is okay, or any confusion you please ask. I will repeat it again, no problem.
So it is clear now.
Everyone is clear? So this is
Yes,
a
fine.
very important,
Yes,
this
sir.
is a very like a basic law for droplet T operation. This is called D square law. So it says if you plot the droplet diameter with time, it forms a straight line. Okay, and we'll not go into the derivation, but theoretically also you can derive this form. Theoretically I can say d square, d at any time is equal to d naught square minus kt. Okay, so this is the equation for this straight line, that's all. This line will have some expression, so this K is called evaporation constant, or I can write it to make it more clear. I can also write d square is equal to d naught square minus kt. So this is the equation for this line, that's all. Is it okay? I have a straight line and d is for any time, d naught is the initial. Let us say this is d naught. If I want to find diameter at any time, I will use this equation. Let us say, so let us say d naught is this. This is d naught. Okay. Now I want to find diameter at any time, given time. Let us say I want to find d. So what I can say is d square is equal to d naught square minus kt, where k will be constant for a particular fuel. This is simply equation of this line. Is this clear, or you have any questions?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Fine, sir.
Fine. So this is d square
Sir.
law for, yes. Anyone has doubt? Okay, so this is the d square law for droplet evaporation. Okay, so let us, we have a few minutes. Let us we have 1, 2, 3 slides. I will wind. You have 5-10 minutes, or you have any class after this?
We don't have any class after this, sir.
Okay, so let us just wind this up. So we have some equations only. I will quickly go through. So for flame length, okay, so this is the flame. For example, let us say this is the flame you have. So if you take from the burner port to the maximum height that the flame reaches, this is called flame length. Okay, flame height or length, you can say that this is the edge, flame height. Right? How do you calculate flame height? So Roper has given some correlations to find flame height for different types of burners. So let us say we have a circular port. That's simpler what we have for a Bunsen burner. So this is basically, these are the conditions given. So this will be basically controlled by momentum or buoyancy. Then we can have a Bunsen burner which has a square cross section, square port. So similarly, it will have momentum or buoyancy controlled. Then we can also have a very thin. So if you take a burner and you make it like isko chapta bana do, you reduce this dimension, make it like this. This is called a slot burner. Okay. So in a slot burner, it could be either momentum controlled, buoyancy controlled, or mixed of momentum and buoyancy. So these are the various correlation. Today I will just quickly show you the equations. Next class we'll talk in more detail. Okay, basically we'll not derive these equations, but when you do numerical, then it will be more clear to you how to use that. These are just correlations. So let us look at them. So for a circular port, this is the correlation what he has given. Okay, so there are two relations. One is what Roper got from theoretical derivation, and what is measured by experiment. Okay, now QF is the fuel flow rate, T infinity is the background outside temperature, TF is the fuel temperature, D is the diffusion. Okay, diffusion constant, and S is the molar stoichiometric, basically stoichiometric ratio, equivalence ratio. Okay, so these are just some equations, and this is inverse function. So once we go to numerical problems, then it will be much more clear. Today, just to have a look at this, I will upload it. This you can go through these equations one. So basically, different correlations for different port geometry. So this is for circular port. This is for square port. Okay. Similarly, for slot corner, he has given 3 conditions. One is that momentum control, velocity is very high. So we have these equations. When this is buoyancy controlled, okay, so we'll have this equation where the velocity is not very high. We have this equation, and A is the acceleration, which can be calculated like this. So this is the last slide for today. So there's one transition regime which is measured using this is called Froude number. Okay, so this will define whether it is momentum controlled, buoyancy controlled, or it is in between. So momentum we have seen in the last slide, buoyancy we have seen in the last slide, and mixed. What is the mixed region? This is what we used for mixed region. Okay, so these are just some equations. Don't worry about it. Next class also we'll talk in more detail on this, and we'll also look at numericals. So using numerical, it will be more clear to you how do we use this equation. Today you just for today's class you just note down that these are the different equations for different port geometry. That's all. You don't have to remember this anyway. These slides will be available to you. So what are the various parameters and how to use that in a calculation, that we'll talk in next week, tomorrow's class, next week's class, Wednesday. Okay. One more thing I just quickly wanted to discuss. Let us stop recording.